All right, Matt Wyatt is an SEC analyst, Mississippi State football analyst. You can follow him on Twitter at Radio Wyatt. Hello, Matt. How are you?
Hey, boys. So you got USFL football coming to town this weekend, huh? You excited about that?
Yeah.
We really are. I mean, there's part of it.
That.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not planning my weekend around it, but I am interested to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I would say one thing that excites me, Matt, is that I was young. I wasn't a kid, but in the 80s when the USFL was rocking, I liked the way they're bringing back the team names and the logos, and so as much as the jerseys and names as it is for anything else for me.
Yeah, sure. And you know what, Jim? You might be able to fill in the details of this story, and not to take up all your time on something you didn't know was coming, but several years ago, David Kellum, the play-by-play voice for Ole Miss Sports on the radio, he was telling me a story about the legendary Jim Fife, that Jim Fife, the Auburn radio guy, was doing those original USFL games on the radio in the Birmingham area. And he said that Jim told a story about like the first game they had or something. The visiting team was from maybe like the West Coast, whatever, but didn't deliver a roster to him on the radio for pregame. He didn't have a roster for the other team. And so they were like, well, how'd you get through it? And Jim Fife apparently said, well, I just made up a name. And I'm trying to think, it was something like this. It was like Jubilee Dunbar or whatever. You make up this name. He said, and by the time the game was over, Jim Fife said people were calling the radio station going, where does this guy play college ball? Who is this? Because he had thrown 3 touchdown passes. He made about 8 tackles on defense, and he kicked every extra point. The same guy, and that's how he got through it.
It was, you'll remember the name. I know, Matt, you know Herb Winches, right? It was Jim Fife and Herb Winches.
Yes. On the Birmingham Stallions Radio Network.
Absolutely.
How about that?
That was probably an exhibition game because their very first game was the Michigan Panthers, and the great Bobby Hebert was the quarterback, and it was an exciting 9-7 affair.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that? 9-7.
So nobody threw 3 touchdowns, but the Jubilee Dunbar may have kicked all the field goals in that one.
I've actually, that is a legit story because I've heard Herb tell that story about Jubilee Dunbar. Herb has told that story before.
That was a good pull on the name there.
Yeah.
I like that.
I don't know. Yeah, that's me. I remember stuff you shouldn't, and I don't remember the stuff you should.
Yeah,
that's me.
Right there with you. So the other day we were talking about who is going to be that team to challenge Alabama in the West. Everybody's talking about Texas A&M. I brought up Mississippi State. I mean, 7-6 last year. 3 of those losses by 3 or less points. Will Rogers, to me, and I had to battle, I forgot which one of these two, is I think he's an elite quarterback. And a lot of people are saying he's system, but I just think Mississippi State's one of these teams that could break through this year. Am I completely wrong on that?
Well, I don't think you're completely wrong. We got to see it happen. And it's going, if you say breakthrough, like if we were to define it, what is it? Is it win the West? No, it's not happening. We don't live in that world. The reality is, and I'm not, trying to be somebody out thinking everybody's not. I just think the reality is you got rosters on a couple of teams in the Western Division that are on a different planet than the other ones. Okay, and that plays out over the course of the season. But, Lance, here's the thing. Mike Leach, everywhere he's been, and just about every year, what does he do? What does he pull off? He pulls off 1, 2, sometimes 3 wins that nobody sees them coming, and you go, how'd they do that? It's like coming back from 28 at Auburn or 20 down 25 at Auburn, you come back and beat them last year. It's like throwing for 600 right out of the gates his first game against LSU. They're going to upset and beat somebody they're not supposed to. That's what they do. What they've got to do to sort of like get up there and challenge is avoid the Memphis game from last year. You see what I'm saying? Like in the midst of all that. So they do have some of the pieces. Telling you, watching them scrimmage, and that's one thing that's great about covering State. Coach Leach is just open to everybody. You want to come to practice? Come on. Anybody, media, opposing coaches, whoever, come watch us practice. And so you get great access. And here in year 3, you just watch them. They'll go 1s versus 1s in a scrimmage right out of the chute, and you watch them, and it just has a better look. It's fast. It's efficient. You can just tell. I mean, you got guys that everybody knows how this thing's supposed to look now. There's no sloppiness. It's running like a better machine right now in practice than I've seen the previous 2 years. So that gives you hope. They're deeper on defense. And then you get to quarterback. Okay, so any of those teams of his, it's going to be driven by quarterback. And my evaluation of Will Rogers too is I don't know that based on what's on paper yet you would go, he is elite. Can he be? I think he has next level accuracy, and I think that's why he's playing for Mike. Will is he's one of those who was born accurate with the ball. He does not struggle to throw it to guys where they can catch it running. And so then it's just decision-making and experience, and he's starting to get there. He's filling out. He's starting to look like a college player. You know, his body's getting bigger. He's looking older. He sounds like a more experienced player. And my question on that side of the ball is, how do you replace a first-round offensive tackle? That's the question mark. Because if you're going to throw it 60 times a game, that's really, really important. You know, so that's my evaluation on that.
I'm interested, though, because, beat Texas A&M last year. Mississippi State did. But there seems to be a big gap between Alabama and success from Mike Leach's offense against Nick Saban and Pete Golding's defense. Is just schematically, can he close the gap with that, or just the way Mike coaches offense and Alabama plays defense, that's always going to be a problem?
Yeah, I think it probably is always going to be a problem. You know, we can look at the draft and we can see what the problem is there personnel-wise. But you know what? I guess so. We've seen it twice now. And at the time that State's offense ran out there in year one in Tuscaloosa in the COVID year, it had melted around KJ Costello. He got hurt, and halfway through the game, Will Rogers, who, as a true freshman, he missed the first 2 weeks, and they went, okay, run on out there to Bryant Denny. It's yours the rest of the way. Good luck.
Thank you. Hey.
Yeah, this is what I signed up for, And then last year, frankly, Alabama's a much better football team than Mississippi State, yes, but State, just in terms of executing basic stuff, throwing and catching, not having drops, they melted on that field because it was Alabama. They played poorly. Alabama forced that, but it was almost like the crimson uniforms kind of forced it too. You saw guys early in the game dropping balls that were just throw and catch slant routes that you didn't see them drop the rest of the year. State didn't respond to it very well, and Alabama had a great plan. So, yeah, I think there's this huge gap. We all know that there's this personnel gap. The whole it's all, I mean, people say it like it's a joke, but it is a reality. The whole thing of Alabama's got more 5-stars on their punt team than State has on its team. That's a reality, okay? That's what you're up against. But with a third-year quarterback, better depth on defense to probably get you an extra possession or two in the game maybe, it should look different. It should. If State's offense goes out there this year in Bryant Denny and looks like against Alabama like they have the last two, it's a major failure, in my opinion.
Matt Wyatt is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at Radio Wyatt, SEC and Mississippi State analyst, and does his own show over there in Mississippi as well. A lot of video work too. You watch through a quarterback's eye, so I'm curious, either quarterback that is new to the league, like a Spencer Rattler or a Jackson Dart, or a quarterback in a different place, like a Max Johnson. Give me that guy that you're excited to see for the first time this year.
Yeah, I really am excited about Max Johnson. I don't know how y'all – I wish I'd listened to y'all's debate that Lance mentioned about debating quarterbacks and how you feel about Max Johnson, but I just feel like Max has had a little bit of it factor at times, and he showed it some at LSU. That first game where they ran out there and beat Florida – in the COVID year down there in the rain. Of course, that was the throw the shoe game, but Max played great in that ball game. And then we saw him last year. And listen, that was another game where State didn't necessarily play its best, but for all intents and purposes should have won the ball game and would have if Max Johnson didn't just go off. He played, State loaded up and came after him in zero coverage, and he beat it. And he's shown me a little something. I think I'm really excited to see him in a new uniform with some new opportunities, and I think he'll get that. And look, Rattler at South Carolina is intriguing and exciting and everything, sure. But it's in terms of if we're making a list, I I got my eye on Max Johnson because I think he's the real deal.
More upside, Hendon Hooker or KJ Jefferson?
I would say Jefferson. Yeah. That's a great question too, Lance. They're a little different, aren't they? Yeah, a little bit different build, a little bit, similar offenses certainly that they're playing in Tennessee and Arkansas, but Jefferson a little bigger, tough as nails, is only going to get better at making some of those throws. And he's had a little bit of the it factor to him too in some of these games. And by that, I mean, it's the, hey, we didn't coach that. I don't know how he did that, but he did it sort of thing. He's had a few of those moments. Yeah, so I like Jefferson. Maybe it's a Mississippi bias. Man, that kid is from in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, right on the edge of the Mississippi Delta. And you come through there, you kind of have a little bit of a different level of toughness too. I like him a lot.
A lot of quarterback battles going on in the SEC as well. But tonight we get to see the Florida spring game, and I'd love to know what you think of Billy Napier as a guy who can build a program, and what do you think he's inheriting down there roster-wise, following Dan Mullen, a guy you know very well. And I don't know how you felt Mullen would work out in Gainesville. So tell me, did it surprise you that it burned so quickly and he's out? And what do you think of Billy Napier?
Yeah, it surprised me that it burned so quickly. It really did. Because, guys, I was one of those pretty confident that Mullen was going to work out well at Florida. Just from what we had seen, the way he ran the program and built the program at State, and you think, okay, if you go replicate that with more 4s and 5s at Florida, I mean, it's bound to work. And, you knew Dan going to Florida was up against the recruiting curve and sort of the pace that Georgia and Kirby Smart set. But still, I'm still surprised to just see it sort of completely fall apart like it did and as quickly as it did. So with that said, Jim, that's my only question with Coach Napier here year one is what is that roster, right? Who is your quarterback? How's that going to work out? What is the roster? Again, it's when you feel strongly like I did about a guy like Mullen at Florida and then it doesn't work out, it can be a shot to your confidence in reading a situation maybe from my perspective.
Right.
But I just think Napier is going to have success there. And I don't know if that means he catches Georgia because we're living at a time where with recruiting what it is and NIL what it is and transfer portal what it is, I don't know that you can catch Georgia, in those things. And so, how are we going to define success for the coach at Florida? I still feel like it's the Florida Gators. We're not far removed from multiple national championships. I still feel like it's a place and a program that ought to have the expectation we can catch Georgia, but remains to be seen.
When I think Easter lunch after church, I think of deviled eggs. Are you a deviled eggs fan?
Oh, I'll eat them. Yeah, I'll eat the deviled eggs. It's not like that's the first thing I think of, though.
It's weird.
Easter.
It is the first thing, like ham and deviled eggs. That's what I think of when I think of Easter lunch. I don't know why.
Well, what do you think of, Matt?
That's a really good question, man. See, we have an Easter tradition. My wife is from Vicksburg, and we always go to her hometown, Vicksburg, Mississippi, for Easter weekend. And we go and eat at this old antebellum home sitting down there General Grant didn't bomb it because it was too beautiful, that whole stuff. And they have a buffet, like an Easter lunch buffet there. And I don't even know that deviled eggs are on there, to be quite honest.
It's an oversight.
It's really an interesting question. You have me questioning if I grew up wrong or something because I don't associate a particular food with Easter. All I think about is candy, pastel colored. Yeah. Everything candy for Easter. But
Do you like the Cadbury egg?
I am not a fan of those at all.
So Dunaway tried to eat. What was the amount, Dunaway?
I was trying to eat a dozen in 30 minutes to wipe off a bet that I'd lost and did not make it.
It didn't make it to the show. It put him down.
Yeah. This is like an Easter version of Cool Hand Luke or something. We'll see how many eggs I can eat.
It was. I was down a few steaks. And so I was wiping some off, and I got into it, and I'd never had one to begin with. So just the texture of what was inside of them threw me for a loop, and it was just pure creamy sugar.
That's all it is sugar.
Yeah, and then and I didn't eat them as fast as I should have, and then. I was a little overweight at the time. My blood pressure was out of whack.
A lot of going against
Things
it.
started spinning in my head as I started to feel sick, and I shut it down at, I think, 5.
Well, and you mentioned being overweight. I was going to say, maybe that's what leads to it. But in my fat days, it's a Reese cup eggs. And it's basically a Reese cup. But we used to say, why is it so much better as an egg shape?
Yeah.
And you'd eat 4 or 5 of those, and then you're lightheaded 30 minutes later. And
you're preaching to my wife right now, and it's to the point where she hides them in our house this time of year. She hides them, and I cooked dinner last night, Matt, and I went to get a bowl to mix up green beans to roast them, olive oil and pepper, and I find an empty bag of eggs, of Reese's eggs there, and I look over at her. She was preparing a sermon. I was like, I didn't even know we had these in the house, and now the bag's empty.
Wow.
And she was like, don't judge me. It's a stressful week.
Wow. It's like Jenny Sack in The Sopranos.
The Reese eggs. That's great.
Deviled eggs or not, I hope your family has a great Easter, Matt. We appreciate the time.
Thank you, boys. Good to talk to y'all as always. Have a great weekend.
All right, buddy. You too. Take care. Matt Wyatt with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.